Welcome and thanks for joining today as part of our podcast series. And we've got an expert, as always, who joins us and would share the knowledge for the benefit of those that are listening and follow us through our channels. And today we've got a topic, servant leadership, that we've already announced, and we have an expert with us. And without wasting much time, I'm going to introduce our guest for today. Welcome, Dr. Madana. And he is an expert in the space of servant leadership. And Dr. Madana, I've known you for the last few years, and I've known you in various dimensions. So it'll be unfair for me to introduce you because I may be biased in what I introduce. So therefore, I'll let you introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll dwell more into the topic for today.
Yeah, thank you, Selwyn. Thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure to be in this podcast, and especially on a topic that is so close to my heart. I call myself a servant leadership evangelist. That's the moniker that I go by because I have made it a mission in my life to evangelize this topic in the world, whether it be the individuals or whether it be the social sector organizations or for-profit corporations, and that's what I have been doing. I've worked in different industries in various positions for about more than 4 decades, and a significant amount of that time has been in helping organizations and individuals implement this philosophy called servant leadership. So that's what I do, as you know, in different parts of the world.
That's great, Dr. Madana. Now, you spoke about servant leadership, and that's the topic for today. And those of us who's been into business schools, now, and if you had to go back by my history, that's about 30 years or longer. We just had to go that much behind. We haven't heard anything of this kind of leadership then. I'm not even sure this is being taught in the business schools now. So what is servant leadership? Like, because I really didn't want to know or put the effort there because I wanted to hear from you as an expert. In simple terms, what is servant leadership?
Yeah. So, the genesis of servant leadership came from a realization that business people had. And you are right in the fact that business schools still do not teach this, because they still teach several other good leadership philosophies, what I call as the people-friendly leadership philosophies, right? The leadership philosophies that are friendly to people, right? And I always ask this question: look, if you ask them, the people who are such leaders, ask them the question: look, what is their approach to people? They will say, look, people, I love my people. I will invest in them. I will motivate them. I will inspire them. I will develop them, etc., etc., etc. But if you ask them the pointed question, what is your number one priority? That's where their true answer comes out, and they will say, organizational results are my number one priority. And in order to achieve the organizational results, I will invest in my people, I will develop my people, I will motivate my people, etc., etc., etc. Right? And so, in a nice, sweet, subtle way, what we are telling the people is that that look, we love you, but we love you as long as you help us achieve results. The moment you stop helping us achieve my results, my love will vanish. So, in other words, you are still a resource for me. You're still something that I can use to produce results. That's the approach that all these leadership philosophies that we call and we teach so much in the business schools. That's all the leadership philosophies are. That's where the question comes in, right? Is there a leadership philosophy that considers people, employees, as human beings and not as human resources, right? And that's the shift that we are looking at. And the whole concept of servant leadership came up as an answer to that question. Look, can we look at people, employees, not as resources, but as human beings with problems, human beings with emotions, human beings with ideas, human beings with failures, etc., etc. So basically what I call as a shift from people friendly to human-centric leadership, and then the servant leader, the whole concept of servant leadership came into existence primarily because that's the only one who which can be truly called as a human-centric philosophy, where human beings are an end in itself. In other words, you ask a servant leader what's their approach to people, they will also provide the same answer that the previous category did. The people-friendly leaders did. We love my people. I will invest in my people, develop my people, inspire my people, etc., etc. But the difference comes in the second question when you ask them, what is your number one priority? Servant leader will say, people are my number one priority. I will anyway invest in them. I will anyway motivate them. I will anyway develop them. I will anyway inspire them. And hey, by the way, when I do all that, I know that they will help me get my results, right? And so that's the shift that we are looking at. So in a way, results become a byproduct of investing in people and not a reason for investing in people. That's the difference, and that's really what servant leadership is all about, and that's what differentiates servant leadership from several other leadership philosophies that we know about and we are taught about.
No, that's great. I heard you say, and more than many times you use the word philosophy. So my question to you is that, is it more than philosophy? Is it something that can be looked as a practical management tool or an approach? And how would that be? Because as a philosophy, it really sounds good,
Right.
but in practice, how does it work?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And that's a question that I almost always get whenever I talk about servant leadership, right? It's like an award winning. So people think that, okay, look, it's like an award winning movie. The movie may win an award, but it may not make any money in the box office, right? So it sounds like a great concept, but hey, man, is it really, will it really work? And especially work in profit making, real world, organizations and things like that. And my effort has always been to establish the fact that yes, it is not just a good concept. It is something that works, and it is something that works. It's something that can be measured. It's something that can be practiced on day-to-day life, day-to-day activities, and in practical work situations, right? So that's where the whole aspect of the framework and other things come in. So the answer is yes, it is a great philosophy, but it is not just that. It is something that works. It is something that is practical, and it can be applied in true work situations.
That's brilliant. That's really great. Now we're actually talking about leadership here, which means we're talking about leaders. Because if you talk about leadership, it still will remain as a theory. You talk about leaders now. Dr. Madana, what in your view are the traits that you can pick, or in your view that you would add on to say a servant leader would have these traits, and a leader who's not a servant leader would have a different trait.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm basically a researcher, right? And this is an area where I have done significant research on, and I have developed a very detailed framework, what I call as a 3-4-7-22 framework, right? It might look like a big lot, but I think it is so it's all about how do we make the leader, right? And so there are basically, it's about those three areas that we look at: vision, character, and relationship. That's what I call it, the imperative. And from there we map it to the four what I call as the spark elements. I'll explain what spark is a little later, but it is about being servant-hearted in purpose, AI ready in mindset, which is very important for today's world, and resilient in behavior, and knowledge driven in impact, right? And now these are what we call as the imperatives and the spark elements that drive it. But the crux of a servant leader is in the behavior of a leader, right? Because ultimately, how does one reflect know that somebody is a leader? By looking at their behavior. How do they behave in situations? How do they behave with people and stuff like that? And that is where I have arrived at a list of 7 very clear behaviors, right? And those 7 behaviors are demonstrating conceptual skills, empowerment, emotional healing, putting others first, behaving ethically, helping others grow and succeed, and creating value for community. So those are the 7 behaviors. And as a short form, I always remember it by the acronym DEEP, BHC, which is basically nothing but the first letters of those 7 behaviors that I just now read out. So my experience very clearly shows that those 7 behaviors are the ones that drive servant leadership behavior. And of course, then you may ask, what is 22? Behavior is something that is external, right? That is observed by others. But when you want to change a behavior, and a behavior is a function of what you are internally, right? So if you want to change a behavior, you don't work on your outward appearance, but you have to work on your internal qualities. And those internal qualities are those 22 attributes that I call it, right? So that's the framework that I use for this thing. But if the long answer is yes, it is all this. It is the 3, 4, 7, and 22 attributes. So three imperatives, 4 spark pillars, 7 behaviors, and 22 attributes. But if you want a summary, it is those 7 behaviors that differentiates, that make a servant leader.
Good. Again, I know there's lots that you put on there as a response. At the very superficial level, it all comes down just by using the word as a servant. Someone as layperson like me, I kind of derive that as something. Is someone to be humble, humility, and we're not getting into the theories, but that is what we kind of understand is what this is about. So again, some of the traits that you mentioned also have got some of that influence. Given all of that, in a normal management structure, there's authority in terms of demand, and you must respond to that demand in terms of your responsibility. And is that complement? Is there a conflict, and how does it pan out from a regular context of management where it is there's always authority? Because in a hierarchy, what defines the hierarchy is the authority. Now, where does that differ, or does it differ at all?
Yeah, that's an important question, and that's again, that is what typically, I mean, the term servant leadership itself is, known as an oxymoron, right?
Oh, okay.
How can you be a servant and a leader at the same time, right? So several people, when we say the word servant leader, they will say, okay, look, it sounds oxymoronic, right? It cannot be true. And that is really where, I break it down to say that, look, servant leader is actually 2 words, right? There is a servant word, and then there's a leader role. So, see, a servant leader does play the role of a leader, a leader who has got authority, who needs to set up the vision, the mission, the values, the organizational goals, and the direction for the goal organization and things like that. This is typically what I call as the traditional upright pyramid, where the leader sits at the top and sets the vision and mission and values and objectives for the organization. The difference, so that leader role is still intact for a servant leader. So servant leader still needs to provide all that, provide direction, provide guidance, provide the values and all that stuff. The difference is, after setting the vision, mission, values, and goals, a servant leader is someone who will step down, and this is where I call as the inverted pyramid, where the leader then steps down and goes at the bottom, and then enables and empowers his people to say, his or her people to say that, okay, now I have set the vision, I have set the values, I have set the objectives now, and I have enabled you. Now you go ahead and implement it, and I am not going anywhere. I am here to serve you. I am here as a resource for you. And that's the servant role of a leader, of a servant leader. And if you really look at it, they complement beautifully, right? There's a leader role where the leader sits at the top of the pyramid and then sets up everything, and then there's a servant role where the leader steps down and lets the team take over the implementation part, right? And so that is the concept that we are looking at. So it's not that the power and authority is going away. It's not that the leader role is going away. It is a complementing of the leader role with the servant mentality and the service mentality that comes during the implementation phase.
Yeah, that's good. That to me sounds like Mahendra Singh Dhoni. But anyway, no, don't have to agree. But what I hear from you is that there's a big shift in terms of what organizations normally are. But I see that you are very much involved in training and making this, not making it, there must be a cultural shift in the way the companies, it's like organizational change management and all of that. So how does that now it's coming to you as a person? I know that you've got a wealth of knowledge, and like you said, you're an evangelist and do all of that. But it comes to impacting organizations. Now, how easy or how difficult is that?
Oh yeah, it's always difficult. It is difficult because you know you basically ultimately organizations do need results, right? They need to produce results, and they will obviously go by look what's the best way to get results, right? And so we need to, so that is where we have to the biggest task that I have in organizations where I implement this is in sort of convincing them that yes, results and relationship, a focus on results as well as relationships can go together, and they are not antithetical to each other, right? And you can actually achieve better results through better relationships, right? So that is the biggest challenge that we face in implementing this, while implementing this philosophy. And if you go back to the 7 behaviors that I described, right? The first one is about demonstrating conceptual skills. This is about the visionary aspect of a leader. And the goal setting, for example, that we suggest for people is what we call as ambitious goals. It's not achievable goals that normally sets. A servant leader really dreams big, and then sets a higher purpose for the organization. And because of that, the team is enabled to really set ambitious goals, stretch goals, not just achievable goals. And then so typically what happens is when we do that, you will see that the team itself stretches in their performance, and then achieves better results. And that's really what the shift is, right? So how do we achieve even better results through relationships, through investment in people, right? And that's really the focus that we are bringing in.
That's great. Again, I get what you're saying, but in terms of impact, again, Dr. Madana, sir, is the start is to get the organizations buy-in about the change management in terms of servant leadership, and then do you then cascade as a training down the structure in order to the managers, they need to be like, because you use evangelists, they need to be converted into their the mindset of a new style. And then is that how it happens, like throughout the organization you cascade starting at the top and take it up to the bottom in order for this to succeed?
Yes, that is the ideal way. That is definitely the ideal way of doing it. But wherever I have implemented and wherever I have had success is by the concept that I call as the stealth way of change management, right? I mean, there are in any change management there are two ways of change management, right? One is the top driven change management, where you make those big bang announcements and you go and say that, okay, look, we are going to implement it, and we are going to have everything change, the leadership philosophy changed and all that stuff. So that's the big bang announcement with done on a large stage, with pyrotechnics and fireworks and all that stuff. And then there is another change methodology called the stealth change methodology. So wherever I have implemented it, it has been like this. I sort of find out a small group that is willing to experiment with it, willing to implement it, and go and help them, work with them, and help them to embrace this philosophy. And then when they succeed, may use that as a case study, as a showcase within the internally itself, right? And then that spreads and they become the champions of that model. They say that, look, we tried this out, it worked, and we are now the best team. And that's exactly how it has happened in the organization that I've been associated with for quite some time. Where I picked up one particular project and they've become successful, and they went around and told everybody, look, we have become successful. All of their business metrics improved, right, because of the implementation of that, and they went ahead and talked to people, and that caught the leadership's attention, the organization leadership attention, and then they wanted to do it for more people and things like that. So it becomes the starfish effect, So that's what I typically call it, the stealth mode of change management. Not necessarily the with from the top, but if we can start from the top, nothing like it. But even if when we can start from the top, always do that stealth management, stealth way of change management. Go introduce it, pick one team, make them successful, make it into a case study, and let the word spread. And that's typically how I have been successful in implementing this.
That's good. Maybe this is still a repeat question, but asked differently. So, which then has been your greatest challenge in implementing servant leadership?
Yeah. So the greatest challenge is in the shift in the mindset that people will need to make, right? There are four mind shift areas that I have identified. The first one is the whole concept of power, right? I mean, leadership normally comes with power. Leadership and power are always married, right? So you think you're a leader and you have the power, and how do you use that power? So that's the first mindset shift. And typically, we are all as human beings wired to use the command and control mechanism, where we have the power, so we can command and we can control things, and we are in control of things. And so that's typically how this thing is. So that's the shift. How do we shift from using power over people to using power with people, right? How do we use the power that you have not to exercise or rule over others, not to command over others, but to serve others? So that's the first mindset shift. The second mindset shift, again, it's difficult because we are naturally wired to use power to rule over others. The second mindset shift is in the area of purpose, right? Because most of us are happy with short-term purpose. If you are in business, we need to make money. That's the purpose. But how can we shift it to a higher purpose, right? Higher purpose of not just making money. Money is necessary, but that is not what is the most important thing, right? But the purpose of business cannot be that. You make money in the process, but purpose must be something higher, to make a difference in the world, to solve a problem, to make communications better, to make curing better, to reduce pain in the world, or to bring peace to the world, or whatever it is, right? So sort of higher purpose, right? So that's the second mindset shift. The third mindset shift is in the values, right? People have, everyone talks about values, but most of the times it is just in the corporate office, in good posters and the website and things like that. But how do we live out those values? And of course, the fourth one is very important, the whole concept of success, right? Because people still look at success as adding value to oneself, right? You gain more, you gain more wealth, you gain more fame, you gain more health, you become more famous and things like that, and it becomes a sort of all to yourself. The focus is on yourself, adding value to yourself, and that's where I bring in the concept of significance. So moving from the value, the focus on success to significance. What is significance? Significance is basically the aspect of acquiring something or adding value to yourself with the explicit purpose of adding value to others. In other words, you gain wealth so that you can serve you can help the poor. You gain knowledge so that you can help the unlearned. You gain wisdom so that you can help the foolish. You gain health so that you can serve the sick, etc., etc., etc. Right? So these are the four mindset shifts that we need to bring about, right? The appropriate use of power, right? Driving with a higher purpose, living values, and pursuing significance instead of success. And none of these four mindset shifts are easy, because we are all born, and naturally wired on one way, and we have to shift that to an other focused way. And that's the biggest challenge, the shift in mindset.
No, interesting that you mentioned that. I was talking about today's topic with some of my colleagues, and one of the questions that they had was, we kind of assumed this is what servant leadership is, and then the question that they asked was, we get it in an organizational context, which is normally a business enterprise. Now, can this style of leadership be replicated, for instance, in schools and academic institutions? Probably the thought is much easier, but where the question is coming from, can you cascade not to the employees as a behavior right up to the students? Is that something that is possible?
Yes, it is possible, and yeah, it definitely possible. This is I have actually helped a couple of education institutions implement this in their whole culture itself. So it is definitely possible, and my research shows that it is something that is relevant and practical in across the spectrum of organizations.
Yeah, that's good. Very related question. Workplaces has changed in the last decade or so. A lot of the workplace is now digitally transformed. So no longer it's just a chair on the desk and face to face. Now in that transformed workplace, which is mostly largely done through digital means, how would this leadership pan through? Um, um, I'm not having any suspicion around the efficiency of the model, but the challenges like any style of leadership would have.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. That is exactly why So when I did my initial research, I had not obviously at that time the whole concept of AI and things like that were not there, right? And so I had basically defined servant leadership as as a servant leader, as someone who invests in the life of another person to the extent that the other person becomes better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, happier, more famous than yourself. That's how I had defined servant leadership during my doctoral dissertation that I did on the topic. Now, that definition sounded good and it is still relevant. But in the organizational context, it becomes a little difficult, and so I had adopted a practical definition for the people in the corporates, where I said, okay, look, as long as you are willing to put the interest of the team ahead of your own self-interest, you can still call yourself a practical servant leader. So that was the definition that I had arrived at earlier, right? And then this whole concept of technology and artificial intelligence and things like that came in. And so over the past couple of years, I have actually I have engaged myself in the research around this. How do we make it, or is it relevant? Or how do we make it relevant for the AI era, the artificial intelligence era? And that's where I came up with that. The model changed in that where I introduced this what I call the spark element. So the model that I today practice and evangelize is called SPARK, which stands for Servant Leadership Pathways for AI ready, knowledge driven leaders. Right, so that is what SPARK is: resilient knowledge. Right, servant leadership pathways for AI ready, resilient, knowledge driven leaders. Right, and that is where those four pathways come in, which is basically servant hearted and purpose, even in the AI era, but AI ready in mindset. You got to be, in the mindset. You got to be AI ready. And when you have that, you got to be resilient in behavior, because situations are changing around you so fast, and and then sometimes ups and downs come so fast. And then all the knowledge that you gather, how do you drive it for impact within the organization and outside the organization? So those are those four spark elements that I have introduced into my framework to make sure that it becomes relevant for the the technology driven, AI driven world. And based on that, I actually revised my own definition. If you remember, my first definition was a servant leader is someone who invests in the life of another person to the extent that the other person becomes better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, happier, more famous than yourself. But now I define servant leadership as a practice that where you use you use your influence and intelligence, whether human or artificial, right, for uplifting others around you, so that they will serve themselves as well as the society and the family and the organizations and the world around them. So that's how I define servant leadership now. So shifting, the focus to both influence and intelligence, both human and intelligence. Use it for making others better, bigger, wiser, richer, healthier, wealthier, happier, more famous than yourself. So the whole concept I have reimagined to make sure that, and that's not just because I wish to do that. Because before I did that, I went ahead and looked at what are the AI era challenges that come in, and there are several of them, but one of them is very critical. One of them is about the human connection that people need. So every research that I did, and I can give you several references where which will point out that majority of them, and actually the statistics says that nearly 82% of the employees want more human connection, even in the AI era, right? And of course, there are concerns about the ethical use of AI. There are concerns about inclusion. There are concerns about job displacements and all that. How do we take care of all that? And that is where the whole concept comes into the fact that yes, the best way to do that is to become even more human centric, right? And that's the whole aspect that is coming up. So the AI is not making the world less human centric. The AI is making the world more human centric, right? So I talked about the shift from human resources to human beings earlier, right? Now we are looking at not just the shift to human beings, but a shift of employees being co-creators with technology, right? So it is not just human beings, it is human beings who co-create with technology. And that is the shift that we are looking at, and absolutely relevant even in today's world. And that is where the spark element, the artificial intelligence, and all that comes into the framework.
No, that's brilliant. And now we have spoken all of this in the context of an organization. Now, if you were to provide advice, or not if you were, when you advise young professionals, so what would that be in terms of the servant leadership and someone who's beginning their career and not under an organization that's practicing all of that as an individual? So, what would your advice be?
Yeah, so transformation always begins at an individual level, right? And the first thing is to understand that we cannot change someone else, and we can only change ourselves, and that's a true fact, right? We cannot change someone else, and especially those of us who are married will know that, right? If we have tried changing our spouses, and what is the result of that? So the fact is that that we cannot change anyone else, we can only change ourselves. And that desire to change ourselves, that to be better, so that we can create a better world, comes from the assessment. So I would always say, okay, start with an assessment, right? And that is where I have developed the 360-degree assessment. So just start with that assessment, and that will tell you where you stand on those 7 behaviors, and then based on that, you can always work on an action plan to improve yourself and become so. All of us are somewhere in that continuum of traditional leadership to servant leadership. All of us. The point is to identify where we are, and then move towards the the servant leader position.
That's good advice. Thanks, Dr. Madana. Uh, I know you published a book, and talk to us about the book, what to expect, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that you share. Now, this half an hour or 45 minutes is not good enough. You just given the essence or the icing on the cake is what we've heard. So, if I need to understand more, learn more, I think the book is a good starting point for us to understand, because we can do it at our own pace and time.
Yeah.
That's the biggest advantage when you have a book in hand. So, talk to us about your book, the name of the book,
Yeah.
where can we get it? Is there a digital version and all of that, please?
Right. So the book that I have published is called Not So With You, and it's available in Amazon. It's available in my personal website, menoraleadership.com. And so it's both in Kindle version as well as print version. It's available. Now, what this book does is basically, of course, it explains these 4 tenets that I spoke about, that the power, purpose, values, and significance, and it sort of explains how, as human beings, how we are, and what is the shift that we need to make. So it actually explains the mindset shift that we need to make on those four mindset changes, four tenets that we call it. And then the book shifts the focus to the most important question, right? It's not about conceptual understanding. It is about how. How do I make that change, right? How do I make this? Because it sounds great, but how do I make that? So that is where we dive deeper into those 7 behaviors, and understand what are some of the things that can be done to to change those behaviors so that we can become a servant leader. And then it gives you additional sources to to go and find out about workshops and about the framework and about the assessment, and all those details are also available in that book. So that's the first book that I have written and published. Incidentally, I'm almost at the finishing stages of my second book.
Oh, wow.
So that should be coming out in the next couple of months, actually. And I'm tentatively planning to title it as Spark to Serve. Spark is the framework for the AI era, and to serve, of course, that remains the base, right? And so that's the tentative name that I have finalized on it. It should be out in this thing. So in that book, we go a little bit more depth, and also there are several case studies, global case studies, as well as Indian case studies on individual transformation, as well as corporate transformation that has happened in the using this philosophy. So you will find a lot more case studies and practical applications. In the second book, what I'm also providing is is what I call as leadership practice guides. So where like you asked that question, look, how do I so for example, how do I practice the concept of forgiveness, let us say, at workplace, right? It sounds like a utopian concept when you look at it, but in workplace, how do I practice that? So I have developed almost about 20 different leadership practice guides, which anyone can just pick up that practice guide and just follow that, and and you will be able to practice that particular concept at workplace, and of course even in a personal life you will be able to practice it. So that's an additional resource that is available in that book, right? So you have the option of going for the first book, which is already available in Amazon, or wait for another couple of months and and then look at the second book, which will be available soon.
Oh, yes, that's great. Um, you would see the QR code displayed on the screen, and if you scan that, that will lead you on to where you can buy the digital version, or it'll take you to Amazon where you can buy those books. And Dr. Madana, congratulations, and we really look forward to your next edition of your book. Needless to say, will be good, but I think the US will be good for you to have the first publication, then the second one will make a lot of sense. I think they will be in a way interconnected. So, and thanks again, Dr. Madana, for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. Is there anything that you would want to say that we have not covered up to now?
Yeah, so I think we all have heard about servant leadership, and one of the things that I have researched about is why doesn't servant leadership work? Why don't people embrace it? I have done some research, for example, in the Fortune 100 best companies to work, and I found that almost about 38% of them fully embrace this concept of servant leadership. Now that's an encouraging piece, but the fact is that still there is another 62 percentage who do not embrace it fully, right? So what prevents more and more organizations from embracing this? And that's where I have come up with a list of 30 different myths that stop us from from this thing, right? Things like it is a soft philosophy. It will not give us results. It is not practical. It's very patriarchal and all that stuff, right? I think the key is to understand that look, those myths do exist, but they are what they are. They are myths. They are not the realities. The reality is something different. The reality is that it is practical. It can be measured. It can be practiced, and it produces results, and it produces a better world, right? And so my request to anyone who is listening to this podcast is to try it out, right? I mean, you may have tried different things. You try this out, and I'm sure you will realize that that it is it's something that gives benefit, something that it'll improve you, it'll improve your team, it'll improve your organization, and it'll even help you create a better world around you. So why wouldn't you try it out, right? So that's my challenge to you. Try this out, give this a try, and I'm sure you will become a follower of servant leadership, and you will embrace servant leadership and create a better world.
Thank you, Dr. Madana. Thanks for coming and take the time to be with us and at our Chennai office. And all the very best to you in your evangelization of the servant leadership as a concept. And I'm sure we'll meet again, probably after your second book, to discuss more about that. But again, thank you so much for taking the time. It was wonderful to have you. I'm sure viewers, you would have benefited as much as I did. Thank you.
Thank you. I did. Yes. Thank you.